Okay, so hi everyone, welcome back to another What's New webinar for the Inventor 2025 release. So just a little bit of housekeeping on today's webinar. If you do have any questions, we're using our live storm webinar platform today. So if you do have any questions, there should be a little questions box, and there's also a chat window, so you can pop any questions in either of those windows throughout the call today. And then we're going to be breaking it down into kind of a couple of sections. So we'll have the what's new side, and then we'll touch on a little bit of the Sevilla Inventor side, but we'll answer all questions at the end of the call. I'm also going to pop up my personal details at the end of the call. So if you do have any kind of direct questions for us here at Symetri, then maybe about upgrades or anything like that, then you can send them on to me, and I'll speak to you directly. So if you haven't met me before or attended one of these webinars, my name is Jason Kelly. I'm one of the application specialists here at Symetri, and I've been kind of in this working for Symetri for about 7 years now. And my key focus areas are around Inventor, obviously, and the kind of the surrounding add-ins. So our own brand products, so the Sevilla range, and also some of the woodwork side, and also doing some of the data management implementations and configurations with Vault, which we'll be looking at on a webinar next week. So just a quick run through of the agenda. Obviously, the main focus of today is going to be looking through the what's new side in Inventor 2025. So we're going to be looking at the 3 core environments. So the part environment, the assembly environment, and the drawing environment. We're then going to have a little look at kind of the general enhancements that Autodesk have introduced throughout this release. And then we'll look at a little bit behind the scenes, what's kind of changing behind the scenes. So we've got my colleague Graham Harrison on the call. I'll let him do an introduction to himself when we get to that point, about the move to .NET 8. Okay, so we'll have a little kind of look behind the scenes of what's changed in Inventor as well. And then finally, what we're going to do is give you a quick introduction to one of our own brand products. So that's Sevilla Inventor. Okay, so let's get started then. And in this release, Autodesk have introduced over 140 new features. So obviously throughout the webinar today, I'm not going to get a chance to run through every single new feature. Lots of these kind of small clicks and picks. But I've kind of picked some of the main features and the main tools that will affect you throughout as well. So as with every release, Autodesk look at kind of combating everyday design challenges. Okay, so what we're going to have a look at is the features that are kind of addressing those that particular theme. And as again with every release, the performance and the graphics of the software have also been enhanced. So when we look at our general enhancements, we'll look at kind of some of the areas that have been kind of improved within there as well. So what we're going to do is start up in the part environment. Now, the finish command was introduced in Inventor in 2024. So if you're not aware of the command, it essentially allows you to add in a property as well as change the appearance for if you're wanting to add a finish or a customized finish to your piece. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to quickly show some videos and show you how the kind of the tool has changed in this release, because obviously it was new in the last release. So what they tend to do is any new features they update and give kind of new criteria and functions to it. So let's actually have a look at the tool then. So when you go into the finish tool, the first thing you'll notice straight away is you have this new little kind of sub menu down the right hand side. And this is the same as in the fillet command, and it's to do with your selection priority. So previously, if you were selecting on components or to apply a finish to the piece, you would have to either select on individual faces or group select. But now what you can do is you can actually pick up on bodies or whole parts to be able to apply your finish to those sections. So it just makes it a little bit easier to use the tool. So what I'm going to do here is select on to apply the finish, and you can now also choose to exclude faces. Okay, so if I just run this through, you can see any faces that you don't want to apply the finish to, you can actually just turn them off using that kind of click option. Now again, these are just small tweaks and features, but it's going to make the tool a lot easier to use rather than having to kind of click on each of the individual faces within there. What we've also got is the option to disable parameters. So you'll see next to the parameters down this right hand side, you've got some disable buttons. So previously, when you exported a parameter in the finish command, it exported it into your parameters dialog box with all of these properties included. Now, each of the different types has different properties available. So what they've done now is they've essentially turned the kind of or disabled the option so that if you don't necessarily want to pull through the comments or the description, you're not clogging up your parameters. You're just only pulling through the relevant data that you want to. And you'll also see there's an option now to export all of the finished parameters within there. Okay. So one other tool or function that they've added is all of these kind of types of finish within here are shown or are designed pulled from a spreadsheet. So that spreadsheet is kind of hidden in the depths of the install media. So if you now go to that kind of little menu at the top of the properties panel, you can see you can open the finished library location. So if you do want to make any edits or changes to it, you kind of got quick access to that tool so that you can go in and open that library directly and make the edits. Okay. So one of the other functions they've added once you've completed the command is you can now show extended names. So if you're not aware, show extended names will give you some more detail about the particular command that you're in within there. So if, for example, you're creating your extrusions and your lofts, you'll see if you go to this little 3 lines menu, you've got a display preferences option and you can turn on show extended names. And that's something that I'd recommend to everyone. But what you've now got, rather than it just saying finish 1, finish 2, finish 3 examples, you can actually see what finish has been applied, and as you hover over it, what particular faces with the faces that aren't turned on highlighted. Now, one of the key features that they've changed is you can now actually choose to derive in or include or exclude the finish command. So if you choose to turn on or off the finish parameters in the make part or make component section, if you're making the component, you don't necessarily need to bring through the finishes. You can turn off that option. And you can also bring it through if you do want to show that within there. And that's going to be the same when you're deriving in a component. You can choose whether you want to include or exclude those particular finishes within there. Okay, so it's added some quite nice tools just to make the tool a little bit more kind of user friendly. So the next tool that we're going to have a look at that they've made changes to in the part environment is patterning. Now patterning's obviously been around for a very long time in Inventor, and they tend not to make too many kind of major changes to it. But what you've got now is some extra tools to help you control and kind of standardize your patterns. Now this is in, obviously patterns are in your sketch, your feature, and your kind of part or assembly environment when you're wanting to pattern your parts. And this works in both the sketch and the feature environment, that you can select on boundaries to enable you to kind of control how that works. So let's have a little look at the tool, and this works for both rectangular and circular patterns. So if I go into my rectangular pattern, what I'm going to do is just generate some circles here, okay, and if I generate them up the other way and flip the direction, okay, what it's going to do is I'm going to choose an internal area that is a closed loop profile. So obviously it has to be a closed loop profile that you're wanting to kind of keep that space within. So you can see what it does in the sketch environment is it won't necessarily delete the features that you're trying to pattern, but it will just turn them to construction geometry. Now you can change that, whether it goes inside or outside, or it's kind of touching, using this kind of include geometry section, and whether you want to just show the center points or the actual feature that you're trying to pattern within there. So it gives you kind of control of how you want to pattern it within specific areas. And it's also the same within the part environment. Okay, so if I just jump to another component here, what I'm going to do is run a circular pattern around this kind of little notch. Okay, and that's going to include a fillet as well. So if I just pause the video here, what you'll see is normally what would happen is it would just pattern it around 6 times, and you'll see that obviously we've got one of the notches is overlapping our cutout here. Now normally this option would fail, okay, because the fillet command would fail, so you wouldn't be able to complete this pattern. What you're now able to do is choose the boundary and actually pick the faces that you want to include it on. Okay, so if you see now, what it's going to do is, because these two faces aren't fully enclosed within the pattern can't work with that one. You'll see that disables or suppresses that particular component. So if I just run the command there, okay, and flip to the top view in a second, what you'll see is that it's actually just suppressed that particular state that it's in within there. Okay, so it's quite a nice little addition. Just adds a little extra bit more control to the patterning function. So just a small tool that they've added. They've modernized the sheet metal environment. So what I mean by that is since about 2018, what Autodesk have been doing is creating these new kind of dockable dialog boxes that you can drag and drop wherever you like over your screen. And you can also change to kind of, it supports light and dark theme, and it doesn't have any tabs within there. So you have kind of a full workflow working top to bottom. One of the main things, or the reasons that I'm pointing this one out, is it can now include presets. So this is included for the face command, the flange, and the cut options. So what you can now do, and if you're not aware of presets allows you to kind of configure the dialog box and have it as a standard within your company or within your individual machines, depending on where it's pointing to in your project settings. So what you can have now, you can see there's quite a few options in this face command within here, or the flange command. What it will do is it will configure that whole dialog box. So if you're doing this regularly, or you're kind of doing repetitive tasks, you know that each time you're kind of removing that human error aspect out, and kind of configuring that dialog box to allow you to generate it based off of a standard, maybe company pattern within there. So we've also had some additions to the hole command. Okay, so we've now got 3 new drill point types. So if your hole doesn't go all the way through, what you've got is now you've got the flat W, the angle V, and the angle W hole types within there. Now, if I just again show you this in action, what you'll see is you won't see too much difference. What you'll see is the way that it's defined in the tree here. So whether the hole goes all the way to the bottom of the angle point or to the top with the angle cuts, you'll see that we've obviously got the degrees symbol within there as well, so we can actually still amend that away from the standard pattern. But one of the main things, or the main features that this is used for, is adding extra detail to your hole annotations. So when you're pulling it through to your drawing type in your 2D environment, it's still going to be pulled through from your styles and standards, but it will also work in your 3D annotations. So you get a bit more detail on how that drill point is shown, whether it's to the end or to the start of the drill point. And you see you've still got your 2 standard drill point types within there as well. So let's move on into the presentation environment. Okay, and the first tool that we're going to look at was actually part of our Sevilla toolkit for Inventor. So if you aren't aware of the Sevilla toolkit, it's a product that we produce that gives you kind of additions or additional kind of productivity commands, or commands that you might find kind of pain points in your work that you think, actually, that if there was a tool for this, it'd make my life a lot easier. So you've come to us, we've wrote the tool and put it into the toolkit. So what's great about this, and you can obviously maybe get tools ahead of time, because there's a couple of tools that Autodesk have introduced in this release, which we've had in our toolkit for kind of a number of years. So you might get the tools a little bit more in advance as well. So in terms of this command, what it's going to do is it's going to replace the model reference. And this is similar to how it works within the drawing environment. Okay, so what you're going to do is, if you've got the setup or the configuration of your presentation file and you're wanting to switch the file out, you've got all your camera set up and everything like that, it's obviously not going to pull through all the tweaks because obviously you've got different components within there. But you can now swap the model reference out, so you've got kind of a standard setup for your presentation environment. Now, what's great about this is it also works with model states. So you can switch between different model states within there as well. So you'll see it gives you a little bit of a reference just to say you're going to swap it out. And you can then see what it's going to do is it's going to replace that model reference and keep any of the kind of the standard commands that aren't linked to the file within there. So Another tool that we've introduced, or that Autodesk, sorry, have introduced, is within the simplify command. So simplify replaced shrink wrap back in 2022. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's going to kind of dumb down your model. So if you want to keep the kind of the intellectual property of the model, you don't want to send out all of the details within your model, you can kind of simplify the model down, or you're maybe working with something that a file size is too big, okay, and you want to reduce the file size. Using the simplify command is essentially just going to dumb that model down. So one thing that you were able to do was to replace it with something called bounding boxes. Now, bounding boxes, if I just stop it here, will essentially give you the extents of the model, okay? So we've got three options now. We've got the orthogonal bounding box, which will give you all of the dimensions, but it will do it based off of your X, Y, and Z planes. Okay, so it will just create the extents of that model based off of the three planes. Now you've got an oriented minimum bounding box, so whatever the smallest size of the box that it can produce will be used within here. But what we now have, if you're creating lots of revolved components or lots of cylindrical components, is you can create it as an oriented bounding cylinder. Okay, so what that does is if you are generating the file, it gives you a more accurate representation of your model if you're wanting to just show how it fits into a specific space. So this is going to be great if you're just wanting to send it out to a Revit file or something like that, where you're just wanting to send it out to the supplier and go, will this fit in this particular space? They can then open it up and they've got the more kind of accurate representation within there. Now this also works within the derive function as well. So you'll notice when you bring in a solid body, you can choose to either include or exclude that particular solid body, or you can replace it with a bounding box, or you can see here we've now got the option to change it to a bounding cylinder. And again, that will be oriented, so it'll be at its smallest point possible. Okay, so moving into the drawing environment then. So the first thing that we're going to have a look at is the text box. Now the text box has again been quite similar for a number of years. And what we've added, or what they've added, is the presets option. Now the presets option in the text box works ever so slightly different to how presets works in general. So normally the presets box configures the dialog box. But for this, you're still going to be, for the configuring the dialog box, you're still going to be either overwriting it or using your standards from this little drop down menu here. Okay, so if you do want to change the type, that's still pulled through from your styles and standards under the manage tab. But what we've got now is we've got the option to actually generate lines or bits of text that you're going to be maybe regularly putting onto your drawing. Okay, so if you've got maybe a line of text that you're putting on every single drawing, you're doing that 10 times a day, normally you'd have to be either copying and pasting it from another document or typing it out each time. And obviously that can be time consuming, it can include human error. Obviously, if you've got checkers, someone who's checking your work, if they're seeing that 10 times a day on 10 different drawings, they're not going to necessarily look for every detail. Whereas this kind of, again, removes that human error aspect and allows you to kind of pull in some kind of general text notes or properties within there. Okay, so something else they've changed in the text box is now you've got the option to edit your parts list properties. So if you're not aware, your parts list, you can actually edit and override from your bill of materials in the parts list editor by just double clicking on it or right clicking and edit. So what you'll now get, if you're wanting to include some of the text or reference some of the text that's included on the parts list. So for example, if we've overridden this description property in the parts list, we want to include that on as one of our text notes. Once you've placed the parts list down, and that's a key point, you'll need to make sure that the parts list is actually placed into your model. You can then choose from the drop down list, you've got parts list properties. So once you've got that parts list properties, you have this little button appearing. Now what this button will do is you'll be able to choose which row that you want to edit or you want to pull down from your parts list. Okay, so this isn't going to edit the property that's within the parts list. You still do that from the parts list editor. This is just going to reference essentially that cell that the properties within. And then you can choose the list of properties from the drop down to the right. Okay, so we could then pull through that washer property. So one of the next commands that we're going to look at is merge cells. Now, Autodesk do this occasionally with commands that are really kind of sought after. Is they release a pre-release. Okay, so the product is or the tool is ready to go, but there are a few kind of bugs or issues that they may look to implement in upcoming Inventor Point updates and also in kind of extra new releases of the software. So they've done this with this merge cells option because a lot of people were kind of requesting this feature. And it kind of does what it says on the tin. So it's going to merge your cells together to allow you to kind of format your table in a more appropriate way. Now, just to start out, this only works in your general table command. Okay, it doesn't work within your parts list at the minute. It doesn't work anywhere else. It's just in your general table, and it has to be a general table that doesn't have a reference to an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so it has to just be in your general table enhancements within there. What you can do is you can just copy and paste, like I've done here, into that property. So what I'm going to do is if I just drop it back a second there, you can select multiple cells, right click and choose to merge the cells together. So if you merge the cells together, what essentially you can do is you can essentially give property names or something like that to show that particular value within there. So if I merge the cells together, I can type in, for example, quantity, and I'm just going to merge the rest of these cells together. Now, again, you'll see kind of some of the maybe the issues with it. You'll see it obviously tabs it to the one side, but once you place it in the middle, you do have it will format it to the center of the cell. So I'm just going to replace the names in here, and you'll see if I pause it here, you'll see it's still centered even though I haven't centered it in this model. Okay, so again, I believe that's probably something that they may look to kind of implement or change in the future. What's great about this is you can then, once you've got your general table, if you're looking to export that back to an Excel spreadsheet, you can do that. Okay, now that will need to be in an XLS or an XLSX format. Okay, it won't be available if you're exporting that format out as a CSV file or as a TXT file. Okay, so you just need to be aware of the kind of the differences between the two. But I know a lot of people have been after this for a while, so again, have a little look at it, have a little play around with it, and if you do have any questions, feel free to come to us. Okay, so they're the kind of the core enhancements in the environments. So what we're going to have a look at now is some of the kind of extra enhancements that Autodesk have introduced. And one of the kind of the key features is the graphics within there. So every release, Autodesk try to kind of improve the graphics as they're going through. And what they've done this time is actually included two new features. Okay, so the first one is highlighting. So when you're highlighting normally, if you select on a file, you'll see it highlights the outside of the model. Okay, now obviously this is quite a bit more of a complex component, so you can actually see the file within there. But if it was a much simpler component or you've got lots of curves in there, you might not necessarily be able to see which file that you've selected on. So if you now go into your tools and application options, we've got the option to highlight hidden faces under our enhanced highlighting. Okay, so you now see just using the normal command, you can see you can highlight the hidden faces behind it. Okay, so the normal way would have been to show it like this, which gives you kind of a big option on screen, whereas the other option is to just show it so that you've got a kind of a clear, easier way to define between components, especially if they look quite similar or you've got the same material, you can see or differentiate between the components, especially if you've got hidden faces. Now, kind of moving on from that theme, and again, another tool that was in our Sevelia toolkit is the option to display your components in separate colors. So this sits under the View tab. Okay, so you'll see just under your section views, you've now got the option to display it in separate colors. So if I choose the option here and just pause it here, you can actually differentiate it between each unique top level assembly and then just general assemblies, and then also for your unique parts and each of your parts within there as well. So we'll just toggle through some of these just to show you the difference. But what it's going to do, and this is essentially just an over-the-shoulder view, and this was requested to us as well. So we know that it's kind of quite a popular command, but it just gives you the option to, especially if you're working maybe with a lot of sheet metal components and everything kind of looks like it's all connected together, that you can differentiate your components to see how it sits and how it looks within there. And as I say, we know it's not a final piece, but it just is a more kind of a visual or for the graphics side. Okay. So the next tool that we're going to have a look at is Inventor's new performance monitoring software. So Autodesk, we all know that Inventor can be a little bit slow sometimes, and that can be due to kind of a wide number of variables. That can be due to the computer spec, to the how old the computer is, to the size of the model. There's lots of different variables. It could be to do with options. So what we have now is the option or the detail to actually kind of show or feed back to Autodesk the performance of your individual machine. So what I'm going to do is show you how to turn this on. So if you go to Tools and Add-ins, so by default, you'll see you've got this performance feedback recorder. Okay, and by default, it just won't be loaded into Inventor. So if you do get requested to send your performance of your Inventor back, you need to make sure that it's enabled in your add-ins section. So if you select on this file, you can then choose to load it in. And where it will go is it will go into your help section. So in the top right corner, you've got the little drop down arrow next to your question mark, and you'll see you've got the performance feedback recorder. So if I just pause it here, this is the dialog box that you're going to get. And the recordings are limited to 10 minutes, okay, but it's going to generate a log file for you. Because obviously these log files can be quite large, it does have that limit on there. But you'll see that once that report has been finished, so what you'll do is you'll start the recording, you'll work on Inventor as you normally would, and then the feedback will be sent back to the Inventor performance team. So this kind of work was beneficial in kind of two parts for you guys and for also kind of the future of Inventor as well. Because obviously if you're sending more data to them, they have more data available to kind of work out where the general performance issues are. So for future releases, they can obviously look to kind of work and improve Inventor's workflow. But if you have a support case open with them, then you can obviously send it back to them. And they've got, excuse me, access to that data within there, so they can actually see how your performance is starting to slow down. Now, if you do have any issues with performance, you can also come to us if you have a support contract with us here at Symetri, and we can also kind of have a little look and give you some kind of tips and tricks on how to improve performance, whether that be some options or some settings that we can kind of help you configure your performance within there. Okay, so one of the more kind of general enhancements is iLogic. Now, iLogic, they tend to kind of look at in the last few releases. So what they've done now is they've added a new event trigger. So if you weren't aware of event triggers, iLogic is obviously the customization behind Inventor. So you can write rules, you can put in different checking points and things like that. So if you're wanting to maybe add in a property when you open a file, you could create a rule that adds the property. Now, obviously, normally you would have to manually run that. But with event triggers, if you choose to open it or run the rule after open document, you'll see it gives you that option to run that event trigger within there. So the new event trigger they've added is mainly for the Vault users because it's before Vault check-in. Now, what's great about this is that if you're wanting to keep your Vault kind of standardized and clean, you can make sure that when you're adding in these particular properties within there, or you're wanting to make sure people are adding in the properties, that it won't check it in. So it's going to perform any final checks, and it will perform it in a read-only state. So if you want to, if people are accidentally checking files into Vault that aren't quite ready, you can make sure all the checks are complete on that before Vault check-in event trigger, so that it will give you kind of a clean Vault to make sure that you know that all the data going into the Vault is standardized, keeping that kind of compliance within there. So one of the other tools they've added is to model states. So model states was introduced back in 2022, but we now have extra support for model states. So we can start to edit parameters, edit constraints with these new scope snippets. So again, this is going to be helpful for things like running on event triggers if you're wanting to close a document, but make sure you've got a particular member scope active, you could use this. If you wanted to make sure you've got all of your iProperties filled in before checking it into Vault for all of your members, you can do that. So you've got lots of kind of now functionality available in that kind of scope snippets area that you can start to kind of look to use within there. We've also got an option to inspect for malicious code. So when you're creating or generating your iLogic rules, a lot of the time you might take snippets from the internet, or you might see someone else as kind of run a command within there. So you might just copy and paste that down from there. But obviously you need to make sure that it's all kind of safe. It's not going to corrupt your model or anything like that. So what it will do now is it will, by default, this option is turned on. Okay, and that's in the iLogic security section. And you can turn on or it will be turned on by default, but you can actually turn it off. Okay, if you do want to turn it off, I'd recommend leaving it on. But one area that you might want to turn it off is if you've had rules and you're quite, you've got lots of kind of customization within your environment, and you've got lots of rules within there. You might want to check that the rules that you've already got running aren't affected by this, okay, aren't slowed down. So what you can do is in this section below is you can set specific areas to not run these particular commands within. Okay, so you can choose any new rules within any new areas. It inspects the rules, but any kind of existing setup, you can get it so that it doesn't have to check it. Okay. And the final new tool that I'm going to talk through is the Revit interoperability. Okay, so the connection between Inventor to Revit. Now, with every release, this is getting improved. Lots of the industries are starting to become more and more aligned, and Revit is the same as Inventor. Okay, you can't back save within Revit. So what you can do now is you can choose which version of Revit you want to export your Inventor file to. And this is in the simplify command. So that works for both RVT and RFA files. Okay, so if you've got any Revit family files that you're wanting to export, you can also do it with this option. And it sits in that simplify tool, which we spoke a little bit about earlier. And you also then have the option to kind of install Revit as well directly from that menu. But what that's going to do is going to give you the option to kind of work with different suppliers, different customers that maybe have older versions of the software, so that you can actually still kind of interact and work and send your files between the two. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is hand over to my colleague Graham, who's going to talk a little bit behind the scenes about the move to .NET 8 and give you kind of a little bit of a background on it as well. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So my name's Graham Harrison. I'm one of the consultants at Symetri. I get involved in some of the automation projects and the add-in applications to Inventor, Vault and the like to improve productivity. So I'm going to talk about some of the changes that are happening around that aspect, in particular move to .NET 8. So previously in Inventor and Autodesk applications, the add-in API engine has been based on .NET 4.8. So this would be in all of the AutoCAD verticals, Inventor, Revit, Vault, and the like. So they were based on .NET 4.8. They are now moving to .NET Core 8.0. All of those applications. So pretty much across the Autodesk suite, they're all moving to an API based on .NET Core. So what does that mean to us as anyone developing custom add-ins or applications? So we can think of .NET. .NET is basically the core engine that our application add-ins are running on. So some of the common dialog boxes for file open, file save, and the like, they're all based on .NET. And previously this has been .NET Framework 4.8. So that's a component of the Windows operating system, and it's been backwardly compatible to previous .NET Framework versions. I say it's part of the Windows system, so it continues to be supported by Microsoft, but it's not being developed any further. So development is now on .NET Core And so that's the reason why Autodesk are moving up to that, because it's a later product version. So what does that really mean to us? So if we look on this, from 2021, Microsoft switched all of their .NET development to .NET Core, and that isn't backwardly compatible with .NET Framework. New versions of the application languages are only supported on later .NET Core. There's all of the new features, programming features that are built into the languages, they're only supported on the later versions, and also support for any new technologies and everything that are coming out. So we'll see it referred to as .NET Core. The latest version of that is .NET version 8. Okay, you can think of it really as sort of like swapping between, say, a petrol engine to an electric engine. Some things are compatible and the same in your car, the body, the chassis, and such like, but there'll be other bits, such as the engine, which are completely different and unsupported and incompatible between the two. .NET Core is cross-platform, so it's across Windows, Linux, iOS, mobile, etc. So it makes it more compatible to create cross-platform applications. We're able to use advanced language features. All of the open source libraries are being developed on .NET Core, and it's a consistent API regardless of the platform that we're working on. So it allows unifying code bases, particularly in the area that we're working on. If we're working across cloud platforms and the like, then .NET Core is really key for that. Okay, and really that allows us to connect our desktop applications with cloud applications very easily, minimize APIs and GPRC, cloud native features built into the core. So again, it just makes our development of those integrated applications a whole lot easier than it would have been previously. And some of the performance benefits around that: smaller footprint, faster startup on those, higher throughput, lower resource, and scalability and cloud friendliness. The things to be aware of with it, though, are .NET Framework and .NET Core are not cross-compatible. So if we have applications that rely on additional functions or libraries that are .NET Framework only, they won't immediately transport up to .NET Core. We'd need updated versions of that. If you have anything, for example, that's, say, a PDF library that's based on .NET Framework, you would need a .NET Core version of that library if one exists. So any add-ins or applications that have been built before, then they need to be looked at. They won't immediately just port over without testing. So that's the important thing. You need to port and test and make sure that everything is compatible. Things like interface elements will be different between .NET Core and .NET Framework as well. So it's checking all those kind of elements.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that, Graham. So what I'm going to just give you a quick introduction to now is one of our own products, and that is Symetri Inventor. So this product is a separate add-in that we have produced to help you combat your day-to-day issues with Inventor and your kind of daily design challenges. So a lot of you before may have used our toolkit for Inventor. Okay, so the toolkit for Inventor is a product that comes with your support contract here at Symetri. Okay, and they're tools that have been designed for your kind of productivity enhancements. So these are tools like pulling extents of the model into your iProperties, or using the enhanced save as feature or the BOM export. There's also tools in there just for kind of quick toggles for turning work feature visibility on and off, and also having different make constraints. But we also have a product called Symetri Inventor. Okay, and Symetri Inventor is kind of the next step on and gives you some more advanced tools to handle kind of your property management and things like that we'll touch on when I show you some of these products. So it gives you more kind of advanced set of tools that again have been designed by from ideas from you guys that you've come to us with your kind of daily pain points, your issues that are that you experience from using the software all day, every day, that maybe Autodesk haven't had a chance to look at yet or are looking to introduce into kind of future releases. So what's great about this is obviously the tools have been designed and ideas have come from you guys so that they're kind of across a wide range of industries. So yeah, we'll have a little look at kind of some of these tools. So the first place to start is obviously what is Symetri Inventor about, and at its core, it is again a productivity tool. So what we're going to be looking at is some of the tools that help us to improve our productivity. Okay, and these can be things like inputting properties or generating secondary file formats on automatically. So a lot of kind of automation commands within there. And with that comes our kind of standardization or our uniform workflows. So we've got tools in here that are going to kind of create your drawings for you so that you don't have to kind of, you've got a standard set of drawings within there to help you kind of improve efficiency as well. And we've also got a component library within there. So obviously you've got your content center as your standard kind of component library area, but that doesn't work with assemblies. Okay, so what we've got is a component libraries, which we again have stored a lot of our own data in there. So you have a lot of data that you can download and work with. But it's gonna save you lots of modeling time creating that component library that you can kind of generate different files from there. So let's actually have a little look into some of the tools that are available. And the first one is the Inventor Property Management tool. Okay, so the property management tool, as you can see here, sits within your model browser. And what's great about this is it's primarily used for checking and changing properties. So you can see in this window, we've got some kind of grayed out options, and we've also got some options that we can edit. Now, if you're in your assembly, to edit a part file that's a child of that within the assembly, you'd have to open it up or right click on it and go to the I properties within there. But with the property manager tool, what you can do is in that level, you can select on the file, okay, and it'll bring up the properties of that file. So you can actually edit the properties at a different level, a level above within there. So when you save it, it will obviously save that particular file so that you can edit all your properties from your top level assembly just by clicking on the file. And that's using these kind of click picks at the top here for your selection priority. Now you'll see we also have different kind of categories and different types, so we can create drop down lists within here. We can work with tick boxes, we can work with instance properties. So if you aren't aware of instance properties, they were introduced in the 2022 release, and it allows you, if you've got the same component, so for example if you've got two bolts, they're exactly the same file but you've got two components of it in the same file, you can actually give them different properties within there for maybe transport or for electrical, depending on what you're looking to kind of use with that. So we can actually configure it within our property management tool, and it's nice and easy to configure. So this whole dialog box can be configured to however you like it. Okay, so you can edit or customize this. Lists can be appendable. Okay, so you can click on the list or add your own properties. As the kind of the manager or whoever's configured it, you can completely customize this list, and you can also have different setups. Okay, so if you've got different part files that you might be working on or different environments that you might be working on, you can change the setup within there. So you can actually select on different configurations of properties for different file types or different industries that you might be working on. It also does automatic calculations of physical properties and measurements as well within there. Okay, so if you do want to add in any measurements or calculate your mass or something like that, again, similar things to like the extents property, you could pull that into the property manager tool and write it into the file. Okay, so you've got maybe the end of the file is showing the length or something like that. So you can completely customize your property list. Okay, so moving on to another tool that we have, and it's got a similar kind of concept, is the parameter manager. So what the parameter manager is going to do is if you see at the top here, again, you can be in your top level assembly and you can be editing parameters of lower down models. Okay, so child files. So if you select on the file, it's going to list again your parameters within there, and you can customize that particular value. Now, what's great is that you can also copy parameters from your assembly down to your part. Okay, or your part up to your assembly. So it depends on how you want to do that. But if you copy the parameters across, it's similar to a derive, but it's not going to keep that live link. You're essentially just copying the parameters across. So again, removing that human error in case you mistype or you put in the wrong number. You've got lots of options from there to kind of manage your proper parameters to copy from one level to another. Okay, so as with a lot of our Sevilia products, we can generate our secondary file formats. So that this can be done in the Sevilia toolkit for Inventor. It can also be done in Sevilia Inventor, and also what we'll be discussing next week is the Sevilia Vault aspect of it as well. So you can see in here, we can generate our file formats on things like save or close documents, and you'll see where that file format. So for example, if you're wanting to generate a step file, if you tick that box on, it will show you that you can generate that step file. Again, automating that function. So making sure you've got a standard setup of your secondary file formats and it's generating to a specific location. Okay, so if you don't have a data management tool, this can be something that helps you generate your file formats so that you don't have to kind of manually do it or manually forget each time. Now, we've also got an option for importing from an ERP system. So if you do have an ERP system, you might have a list of obviously the file types that are within there, or the files that are available. And what you might want to do is import that as either a CSV or an SQL file into the ERP lookup. And then you can copy properties directly from the list into your model. Okay, again, removing that human error, keeping that consistency and improving that compliance within the business, making sure that you're copying properties from one system to another within there. Now, as I mentioned, improving that standardization or keeping that compliance is very key within the drawing environment. Okay, and you can see that with your styles and standards within there, making sure that you're all working off the same styles and standards. But actually, creating your drawings can also be very different. Everyone creates drawings in a slightly different way. So what you can do is you can actually choose this tool to make your drawings for you. Okay, so it will essentially choose to retrieve all of the model dimensions using the retrieve model annotations tool. It will insert the parts list, and you can also choose which template that you want to use, so that you know whoever creates that drawing as a within your company is using the same kind of standard setup, the same parts list, the same dimensions. Obviously, that isn't going to create a final drawing for you. You might still need to go in and customize some text or etc. But there's lots of you're starting out at a core point, so you can see that as a company that is your kind of standard drawing type within there, and that can be done for both drawings and your part drawings as well. And the final new tool that I'm going to show you is just the quick open option. So we all know that when you're going to open from a file explorer, the search option can be quite slow. It opens it obviously up to your workspace, but you might have to navigate quite a heavy folder structure. So what you can do in the quick open option is it opens from your local workspace, but you can type in a few letters and it will open up recently used documents. Okay, so you can actually search through recently used documents. You can also turn off or on specific file types. Okay, so if you've got part files that you're wanting to search for, assembly files, you can search for specific file extensions. So again, might sound just a quick kind of productivity tool, but you might save quite a bit of time if you've got a heavy folder structure and you're actually searching through quite a lot of files by just going to that kind of quick open option. So just to finish up then, Sevilia Inventor obviously is mainly designed as a kind of compliance and productivity tool. But there's lots of kind of standard property handling and things like that that will help you and standardize a lot of things within your business. So if you are interested, obviously I know I've given a kind of a very quick introduction to it and an overview of some of the tools. But if you are interested in hearing more about the tools that are available or any kind of live demos or how it might fit into your business, then as I say, feel free to contact us at Symetri and we'll be able to look at working with you with either the toolkit or Civilian Inventor. So just before we go to questions, just a little bit of a heads up. So next Thursday, we've got the webinar that I'm going to be presenting on what's new for Vault 2025. And we'll also have Graham joining as well to again point out the differences and the changes within the move to Vault.net. Okay, and we'll also give again a bit of an introduction to Sevilla Vault. So it gives you a bit of an overview within there. So if you do want to sign up for that, again, it's on our website at symetri.com. So you can go to our website and then sign up from there. So what we'll do now is we'll jump to any questions. As I say, my details are up on screen. So if you do have any questions that you want to come to me directly, feel free to. But what I'm going to do now is just bring the questions up within there. Okay, Emma, can you see any questions at the minute?
We've got no questions at the moment, Jason, no.
We explained everything perfectly.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll just give it a few more minutes for any questions to come through.
No, I think you've done what was required, Jason, today.
Perfect. Sounds good. As I say, if anyone else does have any questions, feel free to direct them or point them to me directly. My email address is up on screen. But thank you for joining today, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you next week.